I quit at 9 a.m. At 12, the system started deleting itself. They called me 47 times. I didn't answer, because what they lost wasn't an employee. It was the only key keeping the company alive. I knew something was wrong before the elevator doors even opened. It wasn't the usual hum of focused engineers or the quiet clatter of keyboards that greeted me every morning in our Austin office. It was noise, forced, artificial noise, laughter that came a second too late, conversations that died the moment I stepped out. My name is Ethan Cole. I'm 38, 6 feet tall, lean in the way that comes from too many late nights and too little sleep. People used to say I looked calm under pressure, but the truth is, I just learned early in my career that panic doesn't fix broken systems. Structure does. Control does. I built my reputation, and this company's core platform, on that belief. And today, that structure felt off. Check your messages. The text came from Maya. Maya Chen, our lead engineer, was one of the few people I trusted completely. 32, sharp-eyed, always dressed in practical jeans and hoodies, she moved through problems like a surgeon, precise, efficient, no wasted motion. She wasn't loud, but when she spoke, people listened. She had earned that. We had built Orion, the AI infrastructure running 90% of this company, side by side. I glanced at my phone. Maya, they're announcing something, big, not good, be ready. I didn't reply. Instead, I walked forward. The entire company had been pulled into the main workspace. Even HR, even marketing. People who had no reason to be anywhere near engineering decisions were standing in a loose semicircle. No one was talking. Not really. Just waiting. That's when I saw him. Ryan Blake, CEO, founder, early 50s, tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of man who looked like he had never doubted a decision in his life. He had built this company from nothing, and for a long time I respected him for that. But somewhere along the way, confidence had turned into something else, something heavier. Entitlement, maybe. Standing next to him was someone new. Tyler Blake, mid-20s, perfect hair, tailored suit that looked like it had never seen a real workday. He leaned slightly to one side, like standing still was already too much effort. There was a casual arrogance in the way he smiled, like he expected the room to accept him before he had done anything to earn it. I had seen that type before. It never ended well. "Ethan!" Ryan called out, his voice booming across the room. "Perfect timing!" Every head turned. I stepped closer, slow, measured. "What's going on?" I asked. Ryan clapped his hands once, like he was about to unveil a new product. "Change," he said. "We're evolving." I didn't like that word. He gestured toward Tyler. "This is my son, Tyler Blake. He's joining us as head of innovation." The room froze. Not visibly. No one gasped. No one protested. But I felt it. The shift. The quiet calculation happening behind everyone's eyes. Maya looked at me from across the room. She didn't need to say anything. I already understood. Ryan continued, smiling like this was a celebration. "We're entering a new phase. Fresh perspective, new energy. Tyler's going to lead the next iteration of Orion. Next iteration of my system." I turned my gaze to Tyler. "So," I said calmly, "you'll be overseeing the architecture?" Tyler grinned. "We're going to reimagine it, make it more agile, more scalable, more—" He paused, searching. "Disruptive." There it was, buzzwords, no substance. I tilted my head slightly. "What's the current load distribution threshold on the primary cluster?" Tyler blinked. Ryan cut in quickly. "Ethan, let's not get into technical weeds right now." Of course, because Tyler couldn't answer. Ryan stepped closer to me, lowering his voice just enough to pretend it was private. "You've done great work," he said, "but it's time to hand things off. Mentor him, help with the transition." Transition. I looked around the room. No one met my eyes, not because they agreed, because they were afraid. Afraid of losing their jobs, afraid of saying the wrong thing, afraid of becoming the next person quietly pushed aside. My phone buzzed again. "Maya, I'm sorry." I slipped the phone back into my pocket. Then I looked at Tyler, then at Ryan, and finally at the system I had built. The one they thought they could just hand over like a set of keys. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Because in that moment, I realized something important. They thought this was a promotion. They thought this was a transition. Whew. They had no idea what they had just set in motion. I didn't react the way they expected. No raised voice, no confrontation, no dramatic walkout. Just silence. The room was still buzzing with forced applause when I stepped back, creating a small pocket of distance between myself and the center of attention. Tyler was already shaking hands with people he didn't recognize, nodding like he understood conversations he wasn't actually listening to. Ryan stood beside him, proud, confident, completely unaware of the structural fault line he had just introduced into his own company. I took a slow breath and turned away. Maya caught up with me near the glass hallway that led to the engineering wing. "Ethan," she said quietly. Up close, I could see the tension in her face. She always kept her hair tied back, no makeup, practical to the point of invisibility. But today her eyes were sharp with something close to anger. "Tell me you're not actually going to train him." I gave a faint smile. "No," she exhaled, relief mixed with concern. "Then what are you going to do?" "I already did it," I said. Her brow furrowed slightly, but I didn't explain further. Not here, not yet. We stepped into the engineering bay. Rows of monitors, dim lighting, the low hum of machines. It felt like stepping back into something real after standing in a staged performance. This was where the company actually existed. I pulled out my phone and typed a quick message. Me. Maya. Start backing up your personal work. Quietly. Don't touch core systems. She read it, then looked at me. No questions this time, just a small nod. She trusted me enough to know that if I was saying this, something bigger was already in motion. Across the room, I noticed someone watching us. Jake Morrison, 22, summer intern. Tall, slightly awkward posture like he hadn't grown into his height yet. Messy brown hair, glasses he kept pushing up his nose every few seconds. He had that look, curious, observant, not yet trained to ignore what didn't make sense. He approached slowly. Ethan?" I turned to him. "Yeah?" He hesitated, glancing back toward the main floor where Tyler's voice carried faintly through the glass. Is that guy really in charge of Orion now?" I studied him for a second. Most interns wouldn't ask that. They'd stay quiet, keep their heads down. "On paper?" I said. "Yeah," Jake frowned. "But he didn't even understand your question earlier." "No," I replied calmly. "He didn't." Jake nodded slowly, processing that. "That's not good, right?" I almost smiled. "Depends who you ask." He didn't laugh. Good. He understood more than he was saying. "Keep doing your work," I added, "and pay attention. You'll learn more this week than you expect." He nodded again, more serious this time, and stepped back. I watched him go, then turned back to my desk. For a moment, everything felt familiar. My workstation exactly as I left it yesterday. Multiple monitors filled with system diagrams, live metrics, logs scrolling in real time. Orion wasn't just code. It was a living structure, layers of logic, dependencies, safeguards, every piece connected, every piece intentional. I remembered the early days, 3 years ago. Just me, Maya, and a broken prototype that crashed every 6 hours. We slept in this office, ate takeout on the floor, argued over architecture decisions at 3 a.m. until one of us proved the other wrong with actual data. There were no titles back then, no politics, just the work. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small envelope, clean, unmarked. Inside was a printed copy of something that had already been sent hours ago. 6:42 a.m., time-stamped, verified. Filed through my attorney, Daniel Reeves. Daniel was the kind of lawyer you hired when you expected problems before they happened. Mid-40s, always in a perfectly tailored suit, calm voice, razor-sharp mind. He didn't waste words and he didn't miss details. We had met 2 years ago during a contract renegotiation. He had read every clause I wrote, and more importantly, he had understood why I wrote them. He was the one who told me, if you ever need leverage, build it into the system, not the conversation. So I did. I slid the envelope into my drawer and closed it. Then I opened my email. There it was. Subject: resignation. Effective immediately. Status: delivered. Not to HR, not to Ryan, to legal, to the board, to people who actually understood timing. I stood up. No announcement, no explanation, just movement. Maya watched me as I grabbed my jacket. "This is it?" she asked quietly. "This is it." She hesitated. "What happens now?" I looked at her, not as a colleague, but as someone who had built something real with me. "They find out what they actually replaced," I said. Then I walked out. Not fast, not slow, just done. The first error appeared exactly 43 minutes after I left the building. Not a crash, not a failure, a hesitation. Maya saw it before anyone else. She was back at her station, posture straight, eyes locked onto the central monitoring dashboard. The Orion engine didn't behave like normal systems. It didn't brake loudly. It tightened, restricted, questioned. And right now, a thin line of amber text blinked at the top of her screen. Primary authorization latency detected. "No," she whispered. Maya moved fast, fingers flying across the keyboard, pulling logs, cross-checking node responses. Her face stayed calm, but her breathing had changed, slightly faster, controlled. She had seen instability before, but this felt intentional. Across the room, Tyler's voice cut through the tension. "Hey, why is the dashboard lagging?" He was standing behind one of the junior engineers, leaning in too close, pretending to understand what he was looking at. Up close, the confidence he showed earlier was already starting to crack. His jaw tightened every time the screen didn't respond instantly. "Systems just recalibrating," he added quickly, as if saying it would make it true. No one answered him. Maya ignored him completely. She opened the admin console. Access denied. Her fingers paused for half a second. That had never happened before. She tried again, this time through a deeper access layer, one that only she and Ethan had ever needed to use. Architect authorization required. Her stomach dropped. Back on the main floor, Tyler was pacing now. "Okay, seriously, why is nothing updating?" he snapped. "Can someone just refresh the system or something?" A few engineers exchanged glances. No one moved. Because they knew. You don't refresh Orion. At the far end of the room, a new figure stepped in. Caroline Hayes, Director of Operations. Early 40s, tall, sharp features, always dressed in crisp, neutral-toned suits. She had built her reputation on control, processes, timelines, efficiency. But unlike Ryan, she actually listened before she acted. That's why people respected her. "What's going on?" she asked, voice calm but firm. Maya didn't turn around. "We're losing architectural authorization." Caroline frowned. "Meaning?" Maya finally looked at her. "Meaning the system doesn't recognize leadership control anymore." That landed. Hard. Tyler let out a short laugh. "That's not a thing. I'm literally standing right here." Maya didn't even blink. "The system doesn't care where you're standing." Silence. Then the second warning hit. This time it wasn't amber. It was red. "Orphan State Protocol initiated." Jake saw it before anyone said it out loud. He was sitting quietly at his corner desk, notebook open beside his keyboard. Unlike the others, he wasn't trying to fix anything. He was watching, recording, learning. His handwriting was quick, messy, but structured. Timestamps, error codes, system responses. He whispered to himself, "Orphan State." He didn't fully understand it, but he knew it mattered. "Okay, that's it," Tyler said, his voice rising. "Just override it. You have admin access, right?" Maya turned her chair slowly to face him. For the first time, there was something in her expression that wasn't just focus. It was final. "I did," she said. Tyler blinked. "What does that mean?" "It means," Maya replied, each word precise, "the system no longer recognizes any of us as authorized." Caroline crossed her arms. "Because Ethan left?" Maya didn't answer immediately. She didn't need to. Another alert flashed across every screen in the room. Primary architect status, inactive. Jake stopped writing. Tyler stared at the message, confusion turning into something sharper. "So we just log back in as him, right? Like, use his credentials? No one spoke, because that wasn't how it worked. Orion wasn't built on passwords. It was built on trust, on identity, on layers of verification that couldn't be faked with a login screen. Maya turned back to her monitor. For a moment, she just stared at the code. Then she whispered, barely audible, "He already knew." Caroline looked at her. Knew what? Maya exhaled slowly. That this would happen. Across the office, the system lights dimmed slightly, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. Jake noticed. He underlined something in his notebook. System doesn't fail, it withdraws. And somewhere, deep inside Orion, the lock was already closing. By the time the system stabilized into a full lock state, the panic had spread beyond engineering. It reached legal. The legal department sat 2 floors below, quiet, carpeted, insulated from the noise of code and servers. But today, that silence had fractured. Files were open across every desk, laptops glowing with contracts no one had read closely enough the first time. At the center of it was Laura Bennett, mid-40s, sharp cheekbones, shoulder-length blonde hair always tucked neatly behind her ears. She dressed like precision mattered, dark suits, minimal accessories, everything controlled. Laura had built her career on minimizing risk, on catching problems before they became disasters. But today she looked unsettled. "Find the Atlas Orion integration agreement," she said, her voice clipped. A junior associate across from her nodded quickly. "Already pulled it." This was Kevin Dale, late 20s, thin, slightly hunched posture from years at a desk, but with quick eyes that missed very little. He wasn't confident in meetings, but give him a document, and he became dangerous. He scrolled rapidly, fingers tapping nervously. "Here," Kevin said, stopping. "Addendum B, attached to the original consultancy contract." Laura frowned. "Consultancy? Ethan was full-time." Kevin swallowed. "He started as a consultant. This looks like it carried over." That wasn't supposed to happen. Laura leaned in, reading. The room grew quieter with every line. Upstairs, Maya was still at her desk, staring at the locked system. The alerts had stopped escalating, not because the problem was fixed, but because Orion had made its decision. It wasn't asking for input anymore. It was waiting. Jake sat nearby, notebook open again. He had stopped writing code entirely. Instead, he was documenting behavior patterns, system responses, timestamps, messages. But now he kept glancing at Maya, studying her reaction more than the system itself. "Why isn't it crashing?" he asked quietly. Maya didn't look at him. "Because it's not broken." Jake frowned. "Then what is it doing?" "Protecting itself." That answer stayed with him. Back in legal, Kevin cleared his throat. "Clause 14.3, subsection C." Laura didn't respond. She was already reading ahead. Kevin continued anyway, his voice tightening as he understood what he was saying. "In the event of termination, reassignment, or removal of the primary architect without certified transitional authorization." He stopped. Laura looked up slowly. "Finish it." Kevin exhaled. "All licensed systems revert to autonomous protection mode. Access privileges are suspended pending architect revalidation." Silence. Heavy. Final. Laura leaned back in her chair, staring at nothing for a moment. "We didn't buy the system," she said quietly. Kevin shook his head. "No, we licensed it." "And the license," she pressed, "is conditional on Ethan's supervision." Upstairs, Tyler was arguing with Caroline now. His confidence had thinned into frustration, his voice sharper, less controlled. "So what? You're saying he designed it to lock us out? That's sabotage." Caroline didn't raise her voice. "No, that's design." Maya finally turned her chair slightly, just enough to look at both of them. "He didn't break anything," she said. "He removed himself." Tyler scoffed. "Same thing." Maya shook her head. "No, if he broke it, we could fix it." That landed harder than anything else. Jake looked between them, then back at the screen. He slowly closed his notebook. Not because he was done learning, but because he had just understood the lesson. Back in legal, Laura stood up. "We missed this," she said, more to herself than anyone else. "We signed this." Kevin nodded, pale now. It was buried in the addendum, standard carryover language. No one flagged it. Laura gave a small, humorless laugh. It's never standard when someone like Ethan writes it. She walked toward the window, looking out at the Austin skyline. He didn't trap us, she said quietly. He made sure he couldn't be replaced without consequences. Upstairs, Maya returned her focus to the system. For the first time since the lock began, her expression softened, not with relief, but with clarity. He protected his work, she murmured. Jake nodded almost instinctively. And somewhere in that realization, respect took root. Not for what Ethan had done, but for how precisely he had done it. By 3 p.m. the illusion was gone. No more explanations, no more excuses, just silence, and a system that refused to respond. The investor pitch was scheduled for 3:30. The boardroom sat on the top floor, all glass walls and polished wood, designed to impress people who measured confidence in millions of dollars. Today, it felt like a stage set for something already broken. Tyler stood at the front of the room, adjusting his sleeves for the third time in under a minute. Up close, the cracks were obvious now. His posture was tighter, shoulders slightly hunched, eyes flicking toward the door every few seconds, like he was waiting for someone else to walk in and take over. The confidence he wore earlier had drained, leaving behind something raw, uncertainty. Behind him, the main display screen glowed, not with data, with a single message. System access suspended. Maya stood near the back wall, arms crossed. She hadn't spoken in 10 minutes, not because she didn't have anything to say, but because there was nothing left to fix. Her expression was steady, but her eyes tracked everything. The investors entering, the shifting body language, the subtle signals of doubt. Jake stood beside her, slightly behind, as if unsure whether he belonged in the room at all. But he stayed. His notebook was gone now. He didn't need it anymore. The door opened. First came Daniel Brooks, lead investor. Early 50s, silver hair, tailored navy suit, the kind of presence that didn't need volume to command attention. He walked in with measured steps, eyes already scanning the room, assessing. 2 others followed, quiet, observant, carrying the same controlled skepticism. "Afternoon," Daniel said. No one answered immediately. Tyler forced a smile. "Welcome. We're excited to show you." He gestured to the screen, which didn't change, not even a flicker. A pause. Daniel tilted his head slightly. "Is this part of the presentation?" Tyler's smile faltered. "We're experiencing a minor technical delay, just, 1 second. He turned quickly, whispering toward Maya. "Fix it." Maya didn't move. "I can't," she said. Tyler's voice dropped. "What do you mean you can't?" "It's locked." That word landed like a weight in the room. Daniel stepped forward, closer to the screen. "Locked?" Caroline spoke this time, calm but direct. "We've encountered an access issue with the core system." Daniel glanced at her. "Your core system?" "Yes. And this wasn't tested before a live investor demo?" No one answered. Because there was no answer that didn't make things worse. Tyler stepped in again, voice rising slightly. "It's not a big deal. We can still walk you through the concept." "Without the system?" Daniel interrupted. Silence. That was enough. At the far end of the table, a phone buzzed. Caroline glanced down at it, then froze for half a second. "What?" Tyler snapped. She hesitated, then spoke. "It's Redwood Financial." That got everyone's attention. Redwood wasn't just a client. They were the client. Largest contract. Longest relationship. "What about them?" Tyler asked. Caroline looked at him, expression unreadable. "They're requesting immediate clarification on system availability." "Tell them we're in a live demo," Tyler said quickly. "Tell them everything's fine." Caroline didn't move. "Caroline," he pressed. "They're considering pulling out," she said. Whew. The words hung in the air. Jake stepped forward slightly before he could stop himself. "That's because the system hasn't responded in over an hour," he said, voice steady but firm. All eyes turned to him. Tyler frowned. "Who?" "He's right," Maya cut in. Tyler looked between them, something shifting behind his eyes. Not anger this time. Realization. Slow, Unavoidable. This isn't temporary, Maya added. Daniel watched the exchange quietly, then exhaled. I think we've seen enough, he said. Tyler stepped forward, panic creeping in. No, wait, just give us... Daniel shook his head once. You don't understand your own system. That was the end of it. The investors turned and walked out. No drama, no raised voices, just decision. The door closed behind them with a soft click. And in that moment, Tyler didn't say anything, didn't argue, didn't deflect. He just stood there, staring at the blank screen, finally understanding that he had been handed something he was never ready to carry. My phone rang at 4:12 p.m. I had been sitting in my apartment in downtown Austin, the city stretching quietly beyond the glass window. No noise, no chaos, just distance. I hadn't turned on the TV, hadn't checked the news. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what was happening. The name on the screen confirmed it. Ryan Blake. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Then I answered. Ethan. Ryan's voice was different, still deep, still controlled, but the certainty was gone. In its place was something tighter, measured, careful. Ryan, I replied. A pause. Not long, but enough to say everything. We have a problem, he said. I almost smiled. You do? Another pause, this one heavier. Ryan Blake was not a man used to asking for help. Early 50s, built like someone who had spent years forcing outcomes instead of waiting for them. He had always spoken like the room belonged to him. Now, for the first time, it sounded like he was standing in a room that no longer listened. I need you to come back, he said, straight to the point. I leaned back slightly in my chair. No, you don't. His breath sharpened. Ethan, you don't need me to come back, I continued calmly. You need your system back. Silence. Because that was the truth. I can fix this, he said quickly. We can fix this, whatever it takes. That word again, fix. You can't fix Orion without understanding it, I said. And right now, no one there does. Ryan didn't argue, because he knew. So, what do you want? He asked finally. There it was. Not anger, not authority, negotiation. I stood up and walked toward the window, looking out over the city lights starting to come alive. I'm not coming back as an employee, I said. Another pause, shorter this time. Then what? As a partner. Whew, that hit. I could hear it in the silence. Ryan exhaled slowly. You're serious. I always am. He didn't respond immediately. When he did, his voice had shifted again. Less resistance, more calculation. What are your terms? I turned back, leaning one hand against the glass. First, I said, the engineering team stays. No layoffs. No restructuring that removes technical leadership. Ryan didn't hesitate. Done. Second, I continued, Maya Chen becomes CTO. This time there was a pause. Longer. Not because he didn't know her, because he did. Maya's strong, he said carefully. She's the only one left there who understands Orion without guessing, I replied. Another breath, then, all right. Third, I said, Tyler steps down. Ryan's tone tightened slightly. He's my son. And he's not ready, I said just as evenly. Silence. This was the only part that mattered, not the system, not the company. This. Finally, Ryan spoke. What does step down mean? He stays, I said, but not in charge. He learns, from the ground up, same as everyone else. Ryan let out a quiet, almost humorless exhale. You're asking me to demote my own son. I'm asking you to give him a chance to become competent, I said. Those are not the same thing. That landed, harder than anything else. The line went quiet again. I could almost picture him, standing in that empty boardroom now, the aftermath still settling around him, forced to see things he had ignored before. You're not trying to destroy us, he said finally. No, I replied. I'm trying to rebuild you. That was the difference. A long silence followed. Then, okay. Just one word, but it changed everything. We do it your way, Ryan said. Partnership. Maya as CTO. Tyler learns. I nodded even though he couldn't see it. Then we have a deal. The call ended shortly after. No celebration, no relief, just clarity. For the first time all day, something was actually moving forward. I walked back into the building 2 days later. Same glass doors, same polished floors, same company. But it felt different, quieter. Not the tense silence from before, but something heavier. Awareness. People looked up when I entered, not out of curiosity, but recognition. Not just of me, but of what had happened. I didn't slow down. I moved straight through the lobby, past reception, into the engineering floor. Maya was already there. She stood near the central workstation, sleeves rolled up, laptop open, speaking to a small cluster of engineers. There was something different in the way she carried herself now. Same calm precision, but with weight behind it. Authority that didn't need to be announced. "Maya," I said. She turned. For a second, her expression didn't change. Then she nodded once. "You're back." "On different terms," I replied. She almost smiled. Across the room, I saw Tyler. He looked smaller. Not physically. Still the same tailored clothes, same posture, but without the illusion. He stood near the back, listening instead of talking, hands in his pockets, eyes following conversations instead of leading them. For the first time, he wasn't trying to control the room. Good. Jake was beside him, notebook back in hand. But this time he wasn't just writing. He was asking questions, quietly, carefully, but with intent. I stepped toward the main console. "Let's begin," I said. No ceremony, no announcement, just work. I sat down and logged in. For a brief moment the system paused, then, access granted. Across the entire floor, screens flickered. Status indicators shifted from red to amber to green. A low hum returned to the room, not from machines but from people. Movement, focus, direction. Orion wasn't restarting, it was recognizing. I leaned back slightly, scanning the system. "Lock protocols held," I said. "No corruption." Maya nodded. "We didn't touch anything we weren't supposed to." I know. That was why she was CTO now. Not because she was the smartest, because she knew when not to act. I stood up and turned to the team. "We're not going back to how it was," I said. That got their attention. "We rebuild from here. Clean processes, clear ownership, no assumptions." Caroline stepped forward from the side. She had been quieter than usual, observing more than directing. "You're restructuring operations?" "Partially," I said, "but not top-down." I looked around the room. Everyone here knows where the system failed, not technically but structurally. We fixed that first. No one argued, because they had lived it. Jake raised his hand slightly, hesitating. "What does that look like, practically?" I glanced at him. "It looks like transparency." I pointed to the main board. System access logs, visible to the entire engineering team. Maya nodded immediately. "Agreed." "Decision tracking," I continued. "Every architectural change documented, no black boxes." Caroline crossed her arms, considering. Then she nodded too. "Operations can support that." I turned back to Jake. "And it looks like asking questions before things break." He straightened slightly. "Got it." Later I found him at his desk, reviewing logs. "You see patterns?" I asked. He looked up. "Some, not all." "Good," I said. "You're not supposed to see all of them yet." He frowned slightly. "So how do I learn faster?" I pulled a chair beside him. "You don't," I said. "You learn correctly." For the next hour I walked him through system behavior. Not just what Orion did, but why. The logic behind the logic. The decisions behind the code. He didn't interrupt much, but when he did, the questions were better. Across the room, Maya was doing the same thing, just at scale. Delegating, guiding, correcting when necessary. Not louder, not stricter, just clearer. By the end of the day, something had shifted. Not fixed, not finished, but aligned. The company wasn't pretending anymore. It was learning. And this time, it was building on something real. 3 months later, the company felt like something entirely new. Not louder, not bigger, just stable. The kind of stability you don't notice at first, but once you've seen chaos, you recognize it immediately. I stood in the same boardroom where everything had collapsed. Same glass walls, same long table, Same skyline stretching beyond it, but the energy was different now. Focused, intentional. Across from me sat Daniel Brooks again. Same tailored suit, same sharp eyes, but this time there was no skepticism, only evaluation. "Walk me through it," he said. I nodded toward the screen. Maya stepped forward. She didn't rush, didn't oversell. She spoke clearly, directly. No buzzwords, no filler. Just architecture, performance metrics, and decisions backed by data. She had changed too, not in personality, but in presence. Maya Chen, early 30s, slim build, always composed. Before, she had been precise. Now, she was decisive. Leadership had settled into her naturally, not as authority, but as responsibility. "And system integrity?" Daniel asked. Maya didn't hesitate. "Fully restored, with additional safeguards, no single point of failure, including me." That earned a slight nod. "Good answer." I glanced toward Ryan. He sat at the head of the table, quieter than I had ever seen him. Still sharp, still commanding, but no longer dominating the room. He listened now. Actually listened. That was new and necessary. The presentation ended without friction. No red screens, no silence, just questions and answers that held. An hour later, the deal was signed. Not just reinstated, expanded. Redwood Financial returned. So did two other clients who had walked away during the collapse. Contracts longer, terms stricter, trust slowly rebuilding. When the room emptied, I stayed behind. Not because I had to, because I wanted to see it. The aftermath of something rebuilt correctly. "You were right." I turned. Tyler stood near the door. He looked different, less polished, more real. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, tie loosened, laptop under his arm. The performance was gone, in its place, effort. He walked closer, slower this time. "I wasn't ready," he said. No defensiveness, no excuses, just truth. I studied him for a moment. "No," I said, "you weren't." He nodded, took that without flinching. "I thought, if I acted like I knew what I was doing, people would follow." "They did," I replied, "for a while." That landed. He exhaled. "I'm learning now." I know. I had seen it. Late nights, questions, mistakes, real ones, not hidden. "That matters more than anything else," I added. He hesitated, then extended his hand. "Thank you for not letting me destroy everything." I looked at his hand for a second, then shook it. "Next time," I said, "build something before you try to lead it." A small smile. "Fair." He left, and for the first time I believed he might actually become something better than what he tried to fake. Later that afternoon, Maya joined me on the engineering floor. "It's official," she said, holding up her phone. "CTO." I nodded. "About time." She leaned against the desk. "You staying?" "Partially," I said. She raised an eyebrow. "I'm opening a new project," I continued. "Independent, smaller team, different structure." "Still working with us?" "Long term," I said. "Strategic partnership." She smiled slightly. "That sounds like you." It did. Not tied down, not controlled, but still building. That evening I stood on the rooftop terrace. City lights below, wind steady, quiet. 3 months ago, everything had collapsed. Now, it stood again, stronger. Not because it avoided failure, but because it learned from it. I wasn't an employee anymore. I wasn't replaceable. I was part of the foundation. And this time, it was built to last. This wasn't just revenge. It was about knowing your worth. So tell me, if you were Ethan, would you stay loyal and fix everything, or walk away and let it collapse? Does Tyler deserve a second chance, or should failure cost him everything? Drop your answer below. There's no easy side. Like and subscribe for more intense stories like this.